All right. What's up? Let's see if I can do this a little bit better than I have previously. Actually, I kind of wanted to show off something cool that I did here. So, as you'll notice, I've totally destroyed the station. I've pulled the entrance pavilion out of the way. I've pulled the shrubbery out of the way, and that's going to get deleted and reworked. I've pulled tower and the canopy out of the way. I've got video of this. I don't know if you will have seen it by the time I'm uploading this bit of it, but I've got video of trying to assemble all of these godforsaken stars and dots all the way around the swings curves. It's a big pain in the butt, I will say that, if I've not already. But so the interesting thing that I've found out, let me go ahead and edit this track for you guys just so I can bring it up. So as many of you might know, whether you work the ride or have observed the ride, California Screamin' has multiple trains on it. Duh. What you may not know are how many. At any given time, we can have up to 5 trains on the track, plus 1 sitting in the maintenance bay, usually being worked on, and then we have 1 in rehab somewhere else. I think it's out in the main maintenance facility north of Disneyland. But at any rate, in order to control where and when the trains are capable of going and I guess how far along the track they can go before stopping, we have what we call block sections. Screamin' Cast refers to them as zones, but roller coaster terminology calls them blocks. And the idea is everything from a block section forward to the next one. So in this case, this would be zone 1 right here. This is referred to as a block. In the case of this one, the next portion of the block isn't until way out over there underneath the mouse. If I click, I can zoom over. So that would be the block for 2. This here begins the block for 3, which goes all the way to the top of the hill here. From here, then you go and you fall down the hill, you go through the loop, and then you go over to here, and that would be block 4 back there. Block 5 starts here and moves all the way down to here. This would be where block 6 is. Now you'll notice I've got a train parked here in 6. That's because if I've got 6, 7, 8, and then 9 all full, I can hold 4 trains there, and I've got 1 here in the station. You'll notice I am only running 1 station. This is a junk track on the side, ignore it. So after fiddling around with the track settings and getting the trains to cooperate and basically work out the timing issues that this thing had, and in addition, moving the track closer to the Coliseum like it's supposed to be, as you'll notice this is much nicer looking than it was when it was, way the hell out here. I figured out how to work these little block sections. So I wanted to show them off, and it's going to take a little bit of squinting at this bottom panel here because that's where the magic happens. So it looks like we've got 5 different settings that we can control in here. One of them is easy. This is the optional catwalk. I can turn it on or off. I've been custom designing catwalks throughout the rest of the track, as you guys are probably aware if you saw the first video. So, top of the list, we've got brake target speed. What this means is if there's a train sitting here on this block, block 2, when a train approaches from behind in block 1, this brake is going to attempt to pull the train down to 8 miles an hour and then stop the train. This is done regardless of whether or not there's a train sitting there. I apologize for that. I'm mixing up my words already. So this is as if it's a standard brake section. These brakes are capable of just slowing trains, but allowing for pass-through if needed. The deceleration rate, that's 10 meters per second squared. That's the acceleration rate. This acceleration rate here is 1g, or slightly higher than 1g. Trains coming in here are doing about 14 or 15 according to their launch speed out of the station, so 8 miles an hour here works in order to put them forward to the next brake section nice and effectively. I don't know why the target speed and deceleration rate are 2 different rates. I would be much more comfortable if they were all the same, but I know how to do the conversion math for both. It's not hard. It's like roughly 3.2 feet equals 1 meter, and that's all you need to know. The release speed, then, is, in this case, 8 miles an hour. So that means in the event that there is something sitting here in block 2 and the train locks up in block 1 behind it, when the thing finally opens, the release speed will allow the train to move forward at 8 miles per hour, and it will push the train up to that speed at 4 meters per second squared acceleration rate. That means that it'll get the train going about 14 feet per second squared, which is definitely fast enough to hit 8 miles an hour in about a second, maybe a second and a half at the most. Now, why this matters. First of all, it means I can run multiple trains without slowing down. But second, if I come over here, you'll notice I've set the brake target speed here to 60. What this means is that it will not slow any trains down that are moving below 60 miles an hour. It will pull trains of like 100 miles an hour down to 60, and this coaster can do 100 miles an hour down at launch, but I'm not asking it to. In fact, when the train comes through here, it's only doing about 48 at most. I think it's actually like 35, 36. So this top speed here, I set it to the maximum just to get it out of the way. The deceleration rate, this is in the event that there is in fact a train parked at the top of the hill way out there where it says 121 feet. If there's a train sitting there for any reason, and it's like if there was an incomplete cycle at one point and a train didn't manage to make it through the rest of the track, which I have to yet troubleshoot for as it turns out. The deceleration rate will tell how fast the train pulls down. As it is, basically, as soon as the train hits the block, it stops. It doesn't cross over the end of the block. So unlike with actual Screamin' operation, where sometimes we run the risk of a train hanging over the limit line, so out here on this piece of track, or if I come over to zone 6 down here, because I've already got it mapped out, where this orange grate tile thing is down here. If a train hangs out anywhere beyond where that orange starts, we as cast members cannot evac the guests out of that particular car. We have to have maintenance come do it with fall protection stuff, or we have to drop the train forward into the next brake zone and then go catch it there. So as I was saying, the deceleration rate here of 10 meters per second, that's way more than enough for what I'm going to need. It basically means that the train comes to a grinding, screeching halt as soon as it touches the piece of track, and it's never going to cross that piece of track. So in the event this were an actual thing, we'd be able to evac guests no problem. The next bit that, I should mention that every single block zone on the track, with the exception of those immediately around the station, so 1, 2, 8, and 9, and the station itself, those are all set to 60 for brake target speed, and decel is also set to 10. The release speed is set to 8 miles per hour with a release acceleration of 4 meters per second squared. The only place where any of this gets in the way is immediately behind the brake section. I have motors, linear continuous motors. I think is linear synchronous. Excuse me, I'm all out of my head today. There's really no difference between a linear synchronous and a linear induction motor, other than a linear synchronous motor doesn't necessarily have the ability to start the train from a stop. There has to be some sort of a propulsive direction going along with it. Now that said, a dual direction linear synchronous motor, which is this case here, yes, that permits the train to be launched backwards, but that's technically a linear induction motor. As it is, the LSM and the LIM perform exactly the same in this game. In fact, there isn't even an LIM present. So our limbs out in the real world are this game's LISMs. I don't even know what that acronym would be. But the target speed coming in here is 25 miles an hour with an acceleration rate of 6 meters per second squared. What you'll notice is that this acceleration rate of 6 is less than this deceleration rate of 10. So what that means is, in the event this train, as it is, locks up here in this zone, any attempt on my part to brute force the train up to 25 miles an hour to get it out of the zone and continue with the ride will be met with failure. It will only go the 8 miles per hour coming out of the brake section, other than as soon as it crosses over the end of the track. The reason is this acceleration rate does not equal or surpass the deceleration rate listed here. The reason I bring this up is because this was a huge point of contention for me over here in the lift hill. In the lift hill, I've got linear synchronous motors set to the absolute bare minimum acceleration and target speed rates, which is fine. But in order to counterbalance that, I've also set magnetic brakes. We don't have friction brakes on this particular track. There are trim brakes, but they're not the same thing. The magnetic brakes function exactly the same as the friction brakes would in the real world, except that there's no ominous slamming noise when the ride goes down. In the event there's a breakdown of any kind and trains are stuck on these brakes, they're magnetically pinned in place. There are no friction pins. There's no penetration testing. There's nothing like that. It's all held in place by electrical force. But that said, Target speed here is 8, and the deceleration rate is 4. Now, I have to have the decel slightly lower than the accel because of the way the game physics work. If you figure that gravity is 1 meter per second, or 9 meters per second squared straight down, what we're looking at here is a decel of 5, decel of 4 and an accel of 5. That means I've got net plus 1 meter per second squared acceleration rate up the ramp. So technically, even with this setup on a flat surface, that train should still accelerate to 20 miles per hour. It's just only going to do so 1/5 as fast as the minimum speed for that motor. Why this matters? Gravity. Gravity comes into the equation, and it sets these things to be hinky. Notice that now the acceleration rate is bumped up to 6, which is one above the minimum. And I have had to change the decel to 3, and then we come up here again, and this is the block break. It just gets messy from here. And the reason it gets messy is because gravity likes to throw a monkey wrench into the entire plan. Because I don't have the ability to simultaneously control motor and brake in the same piece of track, I have to work with predetermined lengths of track, and this is slightly longer than the minimum I can get away with, but I had to do that for sake of lifting the train. But if I were allowed to use motors and brakes in exactly the same sections of track, I could set the motors for target speed of like 8 or 9 miles an hour, which is all the train is doing when it climbs. And I could set the acceleration rate for that exactly so that it would have equilibrium with gravity or just be slightly above that of gravity, which I could work out by doing an angular calculation. I know my trigonometry. Woo, smart kid. Now, why I'm showing all of this to you guys and why I've spent the last 12 minutes running my gob, because there's something very interesting that I can do when it comes to testing out the ride. Up here in the corner it says ride status closed. I don't have the entrance, exit, pathways, queues, nothing set up. And this game has priority pass, which is like fast pass. So I would need to have all of that set up as well in order to open this up to the public. But as you probably know, there's no public here to open it to. So the reason this all matters is because here under the operations is where I actually control how the block sections work. So first I can tick or untick whether it's a block section track, and of course this is, and I can also set the number of trains. In this case, because we tend to run 5 trains on the track, I've got 5 trains set up. Now here's the really interesting bit. Our minimum departure or our launch interval for the actual motors is 36 seconds at the absolute fastest. I believe anything faster than that, and we will, in fact, overheat the motors regardless of how many trains we're running. We have different intervals for different train numbers, so I think 2 trains is 80, 3 trains is 65, 4 trains is 40, and then 5 and 6 are both 36 seconds, because anything faster than that on the launch area will kill our motors. They can't keep up with the demand required to throw a train, cool down, throw a train, cool down. We've got to have some time in between. In the game, however, there's no such distinction. So I could effectively pump this number up to like 6 or 7, and I found that my minimum departure interval is 15 seconds. The reason I've chosen this interval is because of the way the track works. I go back to edit so that I can pan around here for you. This section right here, the top of hill at zone 4, all the way down around the Coliseum, through the loop, and then over the plateau of 5 is the longest stretch of track. It's the longest gap between any 2 break zones, which means it's the determining factor. So the sooner a train can pass over the block here at the top, go down around over the loop, and then up through 5 and cross through and be done before another train parks at the top of the hill, the more trains I can run to fill that extra leeway. And I've come to find that I could technically run 6 trains on the track. I'm only going to run 5, because 5 trains is enough that I only ever fill the station, and zone 9 is filled for like 5 or 10 seconds before it pulls forward. I could do 6, but I worry that in the event the ride does break down, if I have a train park in 5, I don't know if it's going to be able to drop through everything and make it to the end. As I've said, I've got to test that, but I have not yet done so. So I'm going to go ahead and crank up the game speed just to get the thing going. I've got it testing. It's going to take off out of the station real fast. I hope. Oh, I'm paused. Let me unpause the game. That might help, huh? Duh, stupid me. Oh, fun fact. Whenever these trains launch and they don't have guests on them because we're testing, the water jugs that we have out behind Screamin' are very well mimicked here in the guests sitting in the trains. So, fun little thought for you guys. So here we go. Train number 1 takes off up the hill. I don't have custom coloring yet. I think Frontier, the developer of the game, is actually working on creating trains so that you can custom color each one. Once I do, there's a train order that is very familiar to us down at Screamin' that I think the majority of the viewers will enjoy if I get it set up properly. But, so, until then, all the trains are red with blue trim. I apologize that they all look just like Train 1. But here now, as you can see, I'm running the game at 3 times its normal speed, so I know it's ridiculously fast. But, as you can see, I've got 5 trains running on the track. Not a single one of them is backing up anywhere in any of the zones. And, well, now that I've hit done, I'll reset. But none of the trains will back up in any of the zones. They're all just going to keep running loops indefinitely. And they barely sit in Zone 9 at all, which is kind of nice. So if I were ever to go for 6, I could do 6. As it is, I think I've got to test this thing with like 9 trains on the track as an absolute worst case scenario, and then see if they all make it to the end of the track. Thanks for listening to me run my gob for the last 16 and a half minutes, and hopefully I'll be able to get this thing done before too long. Although, with the way that the stars and dots are going down in the Colosseum, or the swings curve, excuse me, it's gonna be a while. Cheers, guys. I'll see you soon. Okay, I'm back a lot sooner than I thought I would be, but I knew something would go wrong, except it went wrong in a place that I didn't think it would. So all the trains made it to where they were supposed to be. This one almost didn't make it, actually. Oh. Yeah, I've got the music set up. Shh. We're not supposed to reveal that yet. But I think you can kind of see the problem moving around in the background right now. This one here in 6 almost didn't make it into the brake zone. Like, it came up and it slowed down, and then finally the front wheels crossed over the motor section and it picked it up. And I thought that was going to be my biggest problem, but as it turns out, the motors don't reach far enough down the hill to catch this train over here coming out of 3 into 4. So, I need to figure out like how high up the hill this thing actually makes it, so that I can use that to determine where it is I want to put the motor sections to keep the train moving. And it may be as simple as I just put some drive tires there and, I don't know, hide them with some pieces of steel or something, because that would work. But I don't know, I'm kind of curious to see how this goes. So I guess if you guys are so inclined, we'd sit here and watch this thing. So here it goes around the Colosseum. Swings curve. Jesus, I'm losing my mind. And there it goes. It goes up the hill. How high does it get? Here are the motors. Oh, wow, it's almost a full train length down. Oops. Well, I can't say I didn't try. Alright, I guess I'm going back to the drawing board to edit that. Goodbye for real this time, guys. Peace. Thanks for watching. And here's the proof that I solved the problem once and for all. Just because, you know what, I'm a prat and I have to prove that I'm right. Here it comes. This is gonna look really, really funny. That's the only motor it needs. The lowest possible speed, which is 20 miles an hour, with a 9 meters per second squared acceleration, and it climbs the rest of the way up the hill. I know the music's wrong. It does that. The game is not smart enough to treat the music file as though it's broken up into pieces the way the actual ride file does, but, you know. Alright, I think I've made my point. Bye, guys.